Hi, everyone. And today we welcome one of my friend, actually, Francine, to share her stories. And she really inspired me. So this is why our organization also invite her. And she only in her 30, early 30, and she can relate with so many different people in today's economic like environment, and also today's the world. So I really excited and happy for her to share. And she came to Canada about 12, 13 years ago for her school. And then after that, she pursued her careers in Canada. And she started her own organization called Mother to Daughter about a couple years ago, I believe. And she is also my classmate for MBA class. So this is the part why I'm thinking she's going to be a great person to share the story. She lives in Toronto, so right now they're 3 hours earlier than us. We're 4 p.m. here. There is 7 p.m. So thank you, Francine, for sharing your stories with us. And I just wanted to give a quick idea as to what our agenda is and how we're going to go through it. So basically today we're going to be quite relaxing type of sharing and more like a dialogue, like me and Francine, maybe just I ask some questions and she will answer questions. So it's not a lecture style. If any of you guys have questions, you can always type into the chat box and during the talk. And in the end, we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. But first of all, I'd like to introduce everybody for Vision to Reality. Many of you already the members in our Vision to Reality, becoming the visionary. And so this organization is 100% online business community and to help newcomers who wants to start a business or has an entrepreneur mindset. It doesn't matter you have to open a business or you just wanted to find a career, find an organization appreciate you and you can contribute to that organization. There's many newcomers come to Canada every single year. They're not all immigrate. Many of them may be skilled workers. They just come here for a job, or they're international student to come here pursue their education futures. So there's so many different people moving to a new place. We all call them newcomers. So the newcomers actually is a much bigger concept in Vision to Reality. So anybody going to a new community, they can consider themselves as newcomers. You're going to a new job, you can consider yourself as newcomers. So we're basically here to help those people in our organization. And our mission is to empower them, to teach them the mindset. And then at the same time, we support them all the way from the beginning to the end. So our online organization is 24/7 and anybody can enjoy it, can read lots of posts, can meet different kind of people. Our member actually constructed or content of business professionals, business owners, student, people from all over the world, and some just have their careers. They're really good in their job and they can share their knowledge. So we have all kinds of people with different kind of work of life coming into our organization. But for this particular event, we have 4 pillars of our organization. One is our online community. Second is a business workshop once a month. We introduce some business concept or some technical skills we specifically teach for as a business owner. And then another program is called storytelling, which is today we're inviting Francine to share her stories. Is the people already have some achievement in certain areas, or maybe they're really specialized in their own professional, and they can share some of their knowledge and their journeys, how they get to where they are today, and what is the future they're seeing. So this is our storytelling program. We have another one is our mentorship program. So that's the 4 pillar of V2RF's free programs we offered. So now we meet our speaker, Francine. And Francine, you can start to share your story. Just give us a little bit of background of who you are, like where you come from, and why you choose Canada, right?
Absolutely. It is. I'm so honored and humbled to be invited here. And I'm so grateful that you consider me your friend. When to me, I feel I have so much to learn from you. And I'm really that person. I know Quinky was saying earlier, you represent mother, you like a mother to her. I would say the same. So very, very humbled. So I'm Francine. I have a pretty complicated last name to pronounce, which is Mbvoumbo. I am originally from a country in Central Africa called Cameroon. And I immigrated here about 12 and a half years ago. I had very ambitious parents. They had lofty dreams for me. In my country, Cameroon, obviously, we do have access to education, but there's always a hope to for most families to send kids abroad so they have access to a better education, and my parents were no different. And at the time, I did have an uncle that was that had worked for the Canadian embassy and still had ties in Canada. To be fairly honest with you, my goal was to actually move to the US. But he convinced my parents that Canada was the better choice. And I'm glad he did, because it's been a great country that really was has been welcoming to me. And it feels like home 12 and a half years later, really feels like home. Sometimes a bit more than back home. So I moved here. I landed in Ottawa, a much smaller city than Toronto, where I currently live. And Ottawa was that, that it's a bilingual city. At the time, French. I still have French as a first language, but given the nature of my work, I've been actually, even mothers to daughters, expressing myself more in English than anything else. So back then, when I joined, I remember during my first 2 years, because I studied economics, my curriculum was all French. And then I made the intentional decision to switch to English, just because I thought, I'm very of the belief that when you have the opportunity to be in an environment that you're not used to, you need to try to get the good out of it. So I was very keen on learning and adapting as fast as possible, being bilingual as fast as possible. So I did the rest of my curriculum in economics entirely in English. So I started working as well. Right after college, I worked in finance, even though I had an economics background. And I remember my tutor or mentor at the time used to tell me, well, when you have an economics background, you can pretty much do anything. You can work for the government, you can work for, but I was also very, I would say I had targeted the banking space and the Bank of Canada specifically. I can still vividly remember that back then, my first LinkedIn, at that time, social media was not what it is now. And at that time, my LinkedIn said I wanted to work for the Bank of Canada. And because I couldn't get to the Bank of Canada post-college, I had targeted RBC. So that's where I started my financial journey. And it was really a good opportunity to really learn the real life, because university is great, but you don't necessarily face the reality of life, having clients in front of you, having to service them, and really having to be impregnated with the culture at a different level. I was fortunate to obviously make friends. I was also fortunate to have, at the time, managers that became my mentors. At the time, I had never learned of the word mentoring. It was just not, I was not exposed to it. I'm not sure if it was just that I was not curious enough to ask, but I didn't really think it's something I needed. I just needed to have good grades at school and be able to do my work properly. That's all that mattered at the time. And then fast forward into my career, because I spent about 5 years in banking. I just at some point I looked back and I realized that I had built some very strong relationships with my managers. I obviously also had some people on the personal side that I had established some ties with, some connections with, and those people were always much older than me. I was the young girl in a room filled with many much older or more experienced men or women. And my career has proven, or has really demonstrated, how women were a catalyst to my getting a promotion or getting exposed or getting sponsored. But at the time, I wasn't necessarily naming those things. So when I decided to move to Toronto about 4.5 years ago, I had a click at some point, and I just thought of my mother, because I have to speak of my mother. She's the main inspiration behind this organization. And my experience as a woman and an immigrant is also a very strong influence to what, 3 years later is still this organization servicing women. And here in Toronto, I surrounded myself with more successful people. I wanted to come to Toronto because I just knew it was a city that offered more opportunities, whether I was career driven, because that was really the main goal. Even though I was working for RBC, I still had, I want to work for the Bank of Canada. If you had met me 5 years ago, that would have been my goal. But life has a funny way to make the course of things change. And I'm really grateful that I was open to it. I was aware and also open to receiving what it threw at me. Because what happened in 2019, about a year after I moved here, was that I immersed myself in a networking group, and multiple networking groups, I have to be honest. And because where I was coming from, Ottawa, was more conservative. People were not as open to networking. It wasn't really the culture, but Toronto was so different in many ways. And being surrounded by those people definitely sparked something in me. And I found myself thinking more about what my mother used to tell me, which was, if you really want to be successful and you want to have financial freedom and you want to just have a certain peace of mind, and we'll get back to that peace of mind because it doesn't always look as it seems, you should be your own boss. Not as in you have to order people around, but you need to be an entrepreneur. You need to be running your own ship. And when I was still very career driven, I used to say, no, that's not for me. Even though my mother was very successful in her business, she had also left her job to be able to provide for us. I was just pushing that away at the time. And then being around entrepreneurs, having the influence of my mother, starting to understand and realize certain things about the potential I have. Because again, at that time I was working on my personal development a lot. Those things really made me realize that the successes I have had or experienced were things that I should not necessarily assume everyone knows, and my story matters. And after polling a few friends, I realized that it's something I want to do. I'm not going to get further into details, but Winnie, you said mini storytelling. So
yeah,
this is really the background of getting into that light bulb moment before we get into anything further,
yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, because I was the first time I met you, I was just so always so curious why you start mother to daughter. The name normally we're just thinking, oh, mother take a daughter to go to shopping or maybe eating, right? So the name is quite interesting for me.
Intriguing.
And
Yeah,
and when I heard about it, and then we dig into a little bit to find out that actually about the mentorship of older woman or more experienced person to show the not very experienced person. So it's not necessary for the age, right? So more like if you're more experienced in certain areas. But
absolutely.
I always,
Absolutely.
so you start your nonprofit organization about 2, 3 years ago, and what is the biggest challenge you run into?
Before I actually answer that question, I want to go back to the name because when I was trying the, I mean, really taking this leap came after I realized that more people needed to hear about this than I thought.
Mhm.
Because again, when you are in a growth journey, it's almost as if, especially when you surround yourself with like-minded people, if you don't expand enough, you may think everyone is on the same journey. So what I did was that I took a step back and mothers to daughters. Why? Because to me, a mother is someone who represents, she's nurturing, first of all. She's someone that represents wisdom. She represents experience. She represents age in most cases. And a daughter is someone that is not necessarily as experienced. She tends to be younger. And a daughter is also someone that steps out of her comfort zone. So for me, going with the name Mothers to Daughters was connecting generations, experiences, so there can be an exchange and it can become, because our main value proposition is really around that intergenerational knowledge. And the intergenerational knowledge, spans beyond age. It also means that experience you mentioned. So we also acknowledge biological relationships because I wouldn't be here if I didn't have a mother that gave birth to me. We would not be here in this Zoom call if it hadn't been the case. So in our community, we also honor biological women. But the essence of it was really me looking at my life in Canada, away from my family. But yet I had so many mothers. My mom, who really, she was worried at the time, but I could really be confident and tell her, Mom, I am fine. I have mothers. So that's really what the name is all about. Now, to your question, you mentioned the challenge that comes with having a for-profit, correct? Oh, not for-profit.
Nonprofit.
A not-for-profit. There you go. And again, when it comes to that name, it is a not-for-profit because it's the legal structure, but it is a for-impact organization because we believe that the value we bring in women's lives goes beyond being categorized as a not-for-profit or for-profit or social enterprise. We believe in our mission and our vision, which is to elevate women, no matter the stages they are in their lives, and really remind them of the fact that they can learn more, they can grow, they can build a legacy that has nothing to do with wealth. So that's why we call ourselves an organization that is for impact. And challenges to the challenges that come with having a for impact organizations are numerous, right? You have to obviously rely on sometimes funding because you want to offer your services. Again, that's also where there's a bit of an intersection between having a membership base that you charge to your community members, which I see many not-for-profit do, and they fall within the social enterprise category. We do not charge to our members, meaning that all the services that we offer are free, and that comes with just waking up every morning knowing that you make a difference in someone's life is not always easy, but you have to stick to the cause. So being demoralized sometimes can be a reason to want to give up. Another thing is obviously because you cannot run the ship alone. You have to get some help. Sometimes that help will mean that you have some volunteers. Challenges could arise when from one day to another, someone tells you they don't have the capacity to support you anymore. And if those individuals were representing, a help that was pretty essential to you feeling balanced, it creates a disbalance. You feel as if you can't really do it by yourself, but again, you have to go back to the cause. So there are obstacles, but as soon as you stick to the commitment, I think they become opportunities, because I had no background in social services. As you can recall, my background was in finance. So because I've had to navigate the turnover in the not-for-profit space, it made me quite polyvalent in many aspects, whether it's social marketing, whether it's even social media, because again, at the time, I wasn't necessarily the person that was utilizing social media a lot, unlike millennials my age. So I had to learn or unlearn certain things of when it comes to running an organization of this size. And other obstacles could be not necessarily having that funding that will help you launch certain programs or give your community member the experience that sometimes you feel they deserve, and having to rely on an experience that is, I would say, favorable, but not exactly what you had envisioned. So funding is definitely an issue sometimes, depending on your status. And but it is an opportunity to keep believing and finding other options. So yeah, I think those are the two things that are probably that sometimes come back, but it hasn't stopped us. We keep moving forward, because if someone says no, the other person will say yes again, as long as you believe.
I'd like
Yeah.
to give you a little bit of time to introduce your organization. You give the fundamentals, like why you started, what is the thinking behind it, right? Like how you think to start this organization, and what is the core of your organization, the purpose of your organization. So could you just give us a little bit of idea for how you like how you structure your programs, maybe some of our audience, interested in the programs, right? And in that way they can benefit from it.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to. When Mothers to Daughters was, upon inception, the main vision for us was to create events to foster that intergenerational knowledge transfer from a generation to another, from a woman to another, one conversation at a time. But we launched within the pandemic, and we never had the space to create those events. And we adopted the virtual route. The fact that we're able to connect, I'm in Toronto, most of you are in Vancouver. It's amazing. So we leveraged this in the very beginning. And then just like everything in life, you mature, right? I particularly was very patient, because there's one thing to have an original vision. There's another to decide to quit completely or to trust the process. I decided to be patient and see where this will go. And the pandemic was not going anywhere. We're still doing events, virtual events, monthly. And then we merged into creating more of a program structure, because the in-person connection we were longing for could not happen, because it wasn't possible to have people in the same room at the time back then. Mm-hmm. And the programs that we created we decided to create two programs. Mm-hmm. One is called Legacy Building Apprenticeship. The Legacy Building Apprenticeship focuses on encouraging women to build their character and also work on their goals, whether it's personal, professional, or business driven, wanting to become an entrepreneur or wanting to really excel in their career, because I am still a working professional in addition to having this organization that I lead. And that's what Legacy Building Apprenticeship becomes, this general hub where whether you want to be an entrepreneur, you're working professional, or you just want to improve yourself as a person, that's the program for you. You get connected to women from very diverse backgrounds, working in various spaces in the economy. And that's really, and again, just like the name says, it's the everyday, it's the taking a step to even put yourself in a program like that will contribute to working on the legacy you want to leave, whether it's personal, your career. We're not judging anyone who's focusing on their career. We're just providing a space for people to find themselves. Now, as you remember, I am a newcomer. So Guiding Lights, it's a program that focuses on helping women integrate into the workforce in Canada, because as a working professional, I have always made time to mentor others, because I felt coming here as a student was some sort of privilege. The fact that I was able to navigate school, the first job, many firsts were here in Canada. So I really understood the challenge there is to actually leave a country where you had everything. Most of the women I mentored were much more experienced than me. Sometimes I felt completely unqualified to be in front of them, but they had to unlearn everything they had learned in their respective home countries. And here it was just a matter of helping guide them, helping them integrate in one fashion or another. And sometimes that implied having to downgrade from what they used to have before. The resumes were overly impressive. Like I said, I felt unqualified to be in front of those women, but they had to start over. So that really stayed with me. And when we were conceiving our programs, it became really incumbent upon myself and the rest of the team to say that we also want to service that community. Those women that come here and they struggle just to have that first job or move from that first job to another. And that's what Guiding Lights is all about. So we put them in front of industry experts, whether they want to be immersed in finance, whether they want to be immersed in technology, whether they want to have a shot at public services. We really try to make sure that we put someone in front of them that will help them achieve that goal.
Wow, that's great. So I already see there's so many people who need this one from Vancouver here, like, because we also connected with some women organizations, and there's other organizations for specifically helping immigrate and skilled immigrate women. And I believe this program will be awesome for them to move forward. So after this, I'll introduce this one to this organization. So I'm quite impressed for everything happened here. So you're basically offering different kind of activities also in person when, like events allowed. But I have a special question for you is right now in this world, there's many young people under 30 or under 35, right? So they just starting their careers and starting their own, just thinking to focus on which areas, because nowadays it's very different than as our parents. They can work in same organization for many years, right? Or the young people will change their career maybe many times during their lifetime, or even when they focus learning something in university, but when they graduate, they're going to do something completely different, just like yourself, right? So what kind of advice, just from your personal advice to those group of people?
Sure. That's a good one because the younger generation is very prone to actually say yes to an offer, start a job, and afterwards say, find something else and change. And I think it's a trend that's not going to disappear because the essence of it all, it really comes down to having something meaningful. Most jobs or most corporations have a legacy, and legacy here is more pejorative than the legacy I was talking about. Legacy because everyone spends 5, 10, 20, 25, 30, and 40 years in a role before thinking of change. And some of them don't even change. I work in technology, and legacy systems are systems that are very obsolete. It's not necessarily the most engaging or interactive platform you can have. And that's how many corporations are also wired. So as a young professional, I really believe in asking yourself, what's your why? Getting into, an industry, whether it's medicine, whether it's nursing, whether it's finance, engineering, what's your why? What do you want to accomplish being in that specific industry? Is it just a way to get somewhere? I know personally, and based on my experience and my journey so far, this is a way to a means to something. Being attached to the corporate world now is building me as a leader, is building me as someone that had showed, I'll say, commitment to a certain extent. And I think that's important as a young person to think of. And if it's also not for you, you can decide to go ahead and maybe start a business. It goes back to the why. What's meaningful to you as you navigate those career changes. It's also fine to have a point of confusion. And what makes the difference is networking, having mentors, because in my personal journey, I felt in every single role, the people I had in front of me were always prophetizing my next move. I'm not sure how they did that. It's because maybe I was exuding certain a skill set that I was not able to see myself. Because if we rely on our own intelligence as young people to say, we want to go here or we want to do something because, maybe mom or dad or the family is just wired that way, sometimes it doesn't work. What worked for my mom doesn't necessarily work for me, or what worked. So again, your why, surrounding yourself with the right wisdom, because it takes wisdom. It just doesn't take being intelligent sometimes to make certain career changes. You need someone that has been there before, and that speaks for experience. And I think those are aspects that really made the difference for me. Like I said, when after college, I gravitated towards my managers and they became mentors without even me putting the name on it. It's because I was letting myself being shaped by others. I was very driven. I knew I wanted to go to this specific field, but I also left room to be open-minded, right? Because you receive guidance. You don't want to be stuck up. So I think as young people, it's very important to welcome that knowledge from others, especially the ones that have been there before. I also have my peers. I can rely on them. They can boost me to a certain level. But what I've cherished the most is having those mentors. And another word I will drop here is sponsors, right? Having people who know where you want to go and they step in when need be to actually facilitate those moves, those changes. Those are all the things that made a difference for me in my career. And we're not talking about business here. It really works.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You mentioned two terminologies. I know not everybody understand. You also mentioned that when you were younger or many years ago, you didn't even know what is, mean the mentors or sponsors.
Yeah.
And then only last few years is starting to have these words coming out more, and especially for women. Can you just give a quick quick summarize between the difference between a mentor or a sponsor?
Sure. A mentor is someone that, like, mentoring itself is really because I've accumulated a certain expertise, right? It can be a skill set. Maybe I'm really good at playing with numbers. Now I put myself as a mentor to help anyone who's not as comfortable with numbers or want to get to my level with numbers. So it's very targeted to making you comfortable in a specific skill set. So you work on it. You can have, like, I have various mentors, those that are helping me with my career. When I know I'm stuck and, for instance, I just need to really up my design skills, I know who to go to. We have to work. I can have some homework. The person will just gauge my level of comfort as it pertains to design skills. If I want to work on my confidence, I will tell myself, oh, I need someone who's exuding that trait or that character, and that will really help me boost my confidence. The person will share life examples. The person will, challenge me to do certain things so I can step out of my comfort zone to be more confident. So very skills-based and, relationship-based as well, obviously, and conversational to a certain extent. And you can have informal mentorships or informal mentors or predetermined mentors, meaning that I'm going to you for a specific goal. That's what we'll be talking about. And generally that sometimes there's no place for personal matters in those settings. So when you have informal mentors, it becomes those people accompany you in your personal goals. Now, sponsorship is really, really, is even more targeted. For instance, I'll take a personal experience because I think that's just best. When I wanted to move from Ottawa to Toronto, I was at the time with a specific organization, as I mentioned earlier, that was RBC. And I wanted to stay with RBC. I didn't necessarily want to start applying for jobs all over Toronto. And anyways, that was my comfort level, though I wanted to be uncomfortable by leaving a smaller city to a bigger city. And I came across someone that offered to help me. Right away, she was positioning herself as a sponsor. She said, I will help you get there. So a sponsor will advocate for you when needs be. So they will be your cheerleader. It's not to say that a mentor is not, but it's so laser focused on making you achieve this specific goal that they go and advocate for you in front of the people that will accept you if you don't have enough leverage yourself. She was a recruiter, a national recruiter for RBC at the time, and she advocated for me. She spoke to all the hiring managers and HR folks that I had to deal with in a way that I didn't have to go through the natural process. And her and I never met to help me develop anything in the role I was taking. She just wanted to be that person that's making things happen for me because she had enough power, she had enough influence. She knew she could get me where I wanted to get. So in the professional space, a sponsor is someone that will advocate for you to get that promotion. They will advocate for you to have that, I don't know, in the business realm, they will get you to have that next deal. Maybe you don't know some people in, say, aviation space. You just open your business and you want to just service people, maybe just sell them as little as just paper tissue that people have on the plane. And you just starting, now you meet this person who says, oh, I have about 20 or 10 business partners that, I can just put a word for you. That is a sponsor. They know exactly what they're doing and they go forward. They are confident that it will produce results. A mentor can also be a sponsor. So it's always good to really spot those signs, but sponsorship is very specific. It's the same as having organizing an event and saying that this will be the sponsor. The sponsor can be someone who's going to spread the word for you, help you financially, and the role stops there. You can nurture that relationship into ongoing sponsorship, but that's the purpose. If you want your business to go to another level, you should probably think about mentors. I hope I explain as much as I can.
Yeah, very, very detailed, very, very good. Because even a few years back, myself couldn't differentiate these two.
Yeah.
But in a business, for example, in my firm, and if one of the clients becoming our sponsor, and they just introduce so many other clients to us. They just, hey, Winnie's firm is the best. Like use her.
That's right.
Only few words. But they know exactly what they're doing. They basically helping you to bring your name to somebody they don't know you and bring that same trust they have with you to another person because that person also trusts them. So this is quite very often happening in the business. Many people didn't really do that intentionally, but if you discover anybody can be your sponsor. Best to have a good relationship, building trust relationship with that person. I saw Dijot raised hand, but I also saw there's a question in the chat box. Basically, Carlos just asked, did you had any principles or values when you're making any important decisions? So answer that question and then I get Dijot to ask questions.
Sure. Values are very important. And it goes back to knowing your why. Knowing your why means that you have to go back to your values. Maybe your value could be that you want to feel recognized. My value is that I know my work is important enough to me. It brings, it's meaningful to me that I want to be able to deal with someone that will appreciate me at that level. Because you have that baseline as a principle, it will dictate the way you go about the relationships. And that's how, when you have people that don't recognize you for who you are, you can tell right away, this does not align with me. And as much as I can appreciate you, maybe you won't be in my board of directors. A board of directors being a melting pot of your supporters, who could be your friends and family, your mentors, your sponsors. And so that's how you gauge how to actually make such existential decisions. And those are not static decisions, because a board of directors, for instance, it evolves. As you grow through your life stages, you get to know that you need more of something or less of another. When I look back at my character building, which speaks for those values, respect, commitment, consistency, all the things that really make me feel valued by someone, are those things that maybe 5-10 years ago, I could not even, actually narrow down, because I was not aware enough about the things that makes me happy or unhappy at the time, right? Because being young is also a fact. Sometimes there's naivety. You don't necessarily ask yourself the hard questions. You let yourself go through experiences where people treat you a certain way to now go back and say, oh, actually, that doesn't align with me. It doesn't make me happy. It comes with time and experience. But I hope that answers your question. It's just one glimpse of, it's one of my favorite subjects. I think as you build your character and are aware of what your values are, that makes you, that forges you as someone that will be able to say, that doesn't work for me. Being assertive, it really helps with your confidence level as well. Think about punctuality. Are you known, or do you know anyone around you that never makes an effort to be on time when they are with you, but they do the opposite with others? Those types of actions sometimes make me question what I represent for those people. It means that it's whether I have a conversation or I get to know if it's a habit that's general or it's just towards me. That's your assertiveness, right? So it's a very broad subject.
Yeah, that
So,
one we can discuss for hours.
yes, we can talk about this for hours because values differ from one person to the other. And like I said about the board of director, it's not static. There are levels to the tolerance you can have when someone doesn't exude a value that's very important to you, depending on your life stages.
That's exactly, yeah. Because when we were younger, many things we can put up because
Yeah,
we wasn't even sure, what exactly
exactly.
we want. But recently, I reread the book from Ray Dalio and talking about the principle, and one thing he mentioned really echoes with what I believe. Basically, I can say many people actually looking for a meaningful work. The meaningful work basically is in line with your own principle and value. That's meaning for you. And then the number two is looking for the meaningful relationship with a friendship, families, right? Work related. So I believe that's the baseline for human beings need minimum things to do, and people need you, value you. Another side is just ourselves has a meaningful relationship with your coworkers, friends, and family.
Yeah.
I'd like Dijal to ask a question. And Dijal, do you want to turn on your? Yeah, you can just ask question.
Yeah.
Turn on your.
Yeah. Thanks, Francine, for sharing your expertise. As you mentioned, like staying open-minded for new things to learn from your mentors or throughout your career. As you would agree that staying focused on something is also important. So, what do you think are the key qualifications you would recommend that are needed so that a person is focused on what they wanted to achieve, plus they're open-minded at the same time?
I think it really, I like the question because it really speaks for what I mentioned earlier around not taking things as being static.
Right.
You have your goal and you also want to make yourself flexible, means that you are right in the middle and you really try to adapt as much as you can because your goal is your vision, it's there, but the advice by making yourself flexible, you let other people that may have more experience, or you let people that have the attributes of a sponsor observe you along your journey and be able to just instill in you things that will make you as close as possible to your vision or present other options to you. Just
Right.
like it's the same as people, I always joke around with my friends, I'm not a black or white person. You cannot be a well, okay, again, I don't want to say that it's impossible, but there are people that function as black or white. Always try to find the middle. That's what has worked for me. And that's what has allowed me to be flexible. And even in those roles, if I were to go back to my goal to come to Toronto, the example I gave when I was still in Ottawa, I wanted to come to Toronto, but that role wasn't necessarily something that I was thrilled about, right? So I remember the first day I met that sponsor, the role she proposed to me, I went to my manager, which was my mentor, who was my mentor, and I told her, oh, she's proposing me this role. I know I want to go to Toronto, but I don't think I'm ready yet. What do you think? she said, you still need to develop yourself to a certain extent. So what I didn't mention earlier was that it took me a year to actually work on myself and, in the moment, in the present, because that was the goal, to develop myself as a professional. And the second goal was I have to go to Toronto. And after that year, I felt ready to go. I could really take any role, senior role. So what happened is that when I reached out to that lady, she said, okay, I don't have the role I proposed to you anymore. So I was ready for that role, but she didn't have it anymore. And she said, I have this instead. I was flexible. Imagine me if I had said, oh my God, no. I was so laser focused on that specific role. So I said yes. I said yes because I felt being flexible was still leading me to that goal. Now, it would be my responsibility to work in a way that when I get to Toronto, I can work harder to get into the specific field I wanted to get. And guess what? 2 years later, I got exactly in that field. So time, being flexible, staying focused, right? You have to, but sometimes it's not just one straight route that leads to Rome. Sometimes you have to go all around and and maybe it can be frustrating at times. So there you go.
So I guess you can amend the patience is a big player in the game. So okay, as long as you're patient and staying focused and then open-minded, you get a lot of things around and then just make a wise decision and stay calm. Yeah. No, thank you, Francine.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for the people's question. We're closing to the end. I just wanted to introduce our community. So anybody, you wanted to scan the QR code, either you can join our community or you can introduce your friend. And if you wanted to connect with Francine, and she also one of the visionaries in our Vision to Reality online community, you can contact her or you can ask us to see more information regarding her organizations. There's also some postings under one of the topic of her past specifically related to her organization if you wanted to find out more information. So really, really appreciate her time. And is there any more questions? Yeah, so if it's not more questions, we can conclude today's session. I personally learned a lot. Thanks.
Honestly, I learned a lot as well, because sometimes you don't go back to the basis. It's not every opportunity I get to speak or even talk about mothers to daughters where I go back to certain details and merging my career and my entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much. Thank you for creating this space. Thank you for all the questions. It was really, really insightful to me as well because it helps. So I'm very grateful. Thank you, Winnie. I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you everybody taking the time to join us. And we will have the recordings later on will be on our community, and people couldn't join, they can definitely enjoy it or learn something.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.